Class is playing with core cards, playing the game Slapjack, 2 sequential cards that add up to 1. What do you think of the cards, Autumn?
They're nice. You can play lots of different games with them.
Hey Justin, what do you think?
I've played math in years, so it really helps.
So let me run through the design process again. You design, number one is you identify the problem that you want to solve. And then from identifying that problem, we want to look at resources, make a plan, execute on that plan, and then assess how it's going, right? So I really identified a very clear need for myself. Number one is I'm a teacher and kids have trouble with basic math skills. So I kind of went through that design process and came up with these core cards. I manufactured 1,000 of them and kind of tested them out. And that's kind of what you're doing now. And they tested pretty well. Kids liked them. I mean, what do you think of those core cards?
They're pretty cool.
Right? Better than doing a math worksheet?
Yeah. Yes.
I've kind of gone through a lot of trial and error with them. I feel like they actually are going to work pretty well. And I'm trying to sell them to an educational publisher. This is the email I received this morning. Can you forward the royalty arrangement that you were looking for? If I purchased a deck of cards, and I'd sell them at a retail price of $4.95. Everybody kind of with me on that? So this is, I mean, I actually got this. I got this at 5:19 this morning. So I got to kind of figure this out. I have to get back to him today. So how do I even figure this problem out? I mean, like, what do I ask for?
Depends on how many people buy the cards.
That's exactly right, right? It depends on how many people buy the cards.
Ask for a percentage.
Yeah.
Ask for a percentage. There are actually industry standards of the percentages for a royalty. What he's asking for here, he is asking for an exclusive right to these cards. So what an exclusive right means is that I sell him the rights to these cards. He manufactures them, and nobody else is allowed to manufacture and sell them. So the potential problem I have with selling him the cards, what if I give it to him at this great percent? What if I ask for 50% of every deck? So what I'm looking for is an arrangement that'll really create an economic incentive for him to maximize his sales.
Maybe if you asked for a high royalty for the first 1,000 decks sold and then lowered it after that, just a little bit after that. Because that would get him more money and then he'd want to do it. And he'd want to sell at least 1,000 decks.
Oh, that's a brilliant solution. So before we actually even answer this question, let me just go back to some of the manufacturing costs on here. Here's the first question. Where is his break-even point? So at 1,000 units, I'm at $3 a deck. At 10,000 units, I'm at 80 cents a deck. So what you need to do in your notebooks right now is figure out how many decks have to get sold to break even. Okay, so in our first scenario, at 1,000 decks, at $3,000 for the 1,000 decks, my break-even point is 630 units. If I sell a full 1,000 decks, I have a profit of $1,800. However, if I manufacture 10,000 decks at $8,100, then my break-even point is 1,600 units. So if I sell 1,636 units, I've paid off all my manufacturing costs. And if I could sell the remaining 8,300 decks, my net profit will be 41,000. Now that you kind of have this break-even point, let's go back to that last slide and think about what sort of royalty I should ask for. A weird thing to run through, but I really kind of wish somebody explained all this to me. Let me go through my first invention idea. It's a chainsaw tool. This is it right here. I invented this about 20 years ago, and maybe more than 20 years ago. And what it does is you drill a hole in your chainsaw bar and it bolts right on here, and then you hold it up onto a board and then you cut, and you're able to get really square cuts. Or if you want to do a fence post at, like a beveled top fence post, you can set the miter gauge right here and get perfect angles, whatever you want to get. Right? So I don't know if you've ever seen Alaskan chainsaw mills, but I sold it to the guy who owns that company, and I gave him an exclusive on it. And you know how many of these things he sold at my really good royalty?
Very little.
6, right? He sold 6. But I was locked up in a contract with an exclusive, and I couldn't go anywhere else. And if I really understand what I was selling when I sold that exclusive, I would have built in a little bit different royalty payment. And you know, if I felt like I even understood the industry or even how any of this stuff worked, I wouldn't have gone in there with a blindfold on, because that's exactly what I did. So go ahead and figure out a royalty agreement. There are a couple pieces to it. You got to figure out what potential sales could be, usually done on a spreadsheet. You know, you run through 10 different scenarios. And then you also, in that royalty agreement you're coming up with, you really want to have some economic incentive for the guy buying the exclusive to deliver a lot of units per year. All right, here's some of the royalty agreements the students came up with. $2.50 per unit for the first 1,000 units, and then a tier, $1.50 per unit for the next 4,000, and then $1 per unit there afterwards. Here's another scenario, $5,000 up front, and then 35 cents per unit. There's another scenario, student came up with $1 per deck for the first 5,000 units, 75 cents per deck for the next 5, and then 50 cents there afterwards. So we have all these scenarios, and from here we're going to put the 3 main ones the kids came up with and put them in a spreadsheet and run some possible scenarios on that spreadsheet. Here's my Excel spreadsheet that I created. My rows going across are potential units sold for 1,000, 2,000, and 1,000 increments to 10, then 20, then 30. Then this is my first model, a flat fee of $5,000 plus 25 cents per unit. This is what my proceeds would be after 1,000 units, after 2,000 units. And then whoever I did this deal with, this would be his proceeds. So if he only sold 1,000 units, he would be out $8,400. But if he were to sell 5,000 units, he would make $10,000 and I would make $6,000. If it sold 10,000 units, I would make $7,500, he would make $34,000. And if it went really big, like 30,000 units, I would make $12,500, he would make $112,000. Second scenario is a higher flat fee of $7,000 per unit. I'm sorry, a flat fee is $7,000, 10 cents per unit. Third scenario is $10,000 up front and 5 cents per unit. These would be my proceeds based on these number of units, and these would be the buyers. The equations I put in here, so the equation for me would be equals 5,000 plus a product of the number of units sold times 25 cents. Right here, his equation would be equal to the product of number of units sold times the $4.95 sale price minus the cost of manufacturing minus the product of the number of units sold, 25-cent royalty, minus the $5,000 flat fee. So that's how I created those equations. And you can kind of pause the video here and really look over these numbers. Okay, take it a step further and see if you could do this Common Core Smarter Balance math problem. Pause the video and you could look at the screen for a while, but this is straight out of the Smarter Balance assessments that are online. Guy's buying a used car and he's doing a break-even analysis between car A and car B. Flat fees and then miles per gallon, and you have prices per gallon. So go ahead and try and figure this problem out.